the role of the mayor, and people are sometimes, no matter what side, when we talk about democracy and what side, once I leave the room, whatever side I was on in that vote, I always am the spokesperson on behalf of the
regardless.
And so I'm supportive of it.
Sometimes you're speaking to something that you may have voted against.
But exactly, right? And so that dynamics for people, councillors can leave and they can say, no, I was opposed to that and here's why I was. I would never do that. I would always speak representative of council. I'm representing the majority wishes of council.
Well, then you have to go down that discussion about, well, you were for this and why did it go another way then? Why can't, get your council under control? Well, that's not how it works either.
No, absolutely, right? You're one vote, you're one member, you chair the meetings, but when I walk out of there, I'm always going to be the spokesperson for council. And there was lots of occasions where I was on the three side
of bad news, so to speak.
But you leave, and as the mayor, you're elected to be that spokesperson for council. And so I would always try to do that.
Something we never talked about last time, and it's kind of a more earlier Dale question, was when you were growing up, did you have any political aspirations or any politicians that maybe you didn't know they were politicians, but like I guess you're of the era of who's that JFK guy, but or anybody like that sticking out to you that just were good examples of what to do or what not to do in some cases?
It's funny you should ask me that question, because not funny, but it's a little bit ironic to me because I don't talk about it very much. But one of the reporters did a story on it one time, and it was about my grandpa, my grandfather, Charles Homer Bumstead, on my dad's dad. And my grandpa come into the Peace River country in the 1940s, and he was just a bit of a pioneer guy and a real entrepreneur. So he came here from first Ontario to Saskatchewan through the Depression, and then heard about the opportunity in the Peace River country for homesteading. So he comes here homesteading and starts logging and lumber and sawmill. And he was a real community kind of guy. He was he chaired the very first board meeting of the Lakeview Credit Union.
So
his share number at the co-op was 3.
See, they were always looking for a single digit co-op member, right?
So my grandpa was 3.
There you go.
And so I remember he ran for in the early days, the CCF party, the NDP, the predecessor to the NDP. He was a candidate, I think I would say in the late 40s maybe. And I remember when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, and I don't know why he got me, but he would take me to the political meetings or the community meetings, and I'd say to him, come on, Dale, we're going to a meeting. I say, no, Grandpa, I want to ride my bike. I don't want to go to a meeting. He said, oh, come on, it'll be good for you.
Ride your bike to meeting.
And it's funny how when I think about that, how that potentially that influence of your family and an individual like my grandpa, who may have influenced me in terms of being involved in community, right? And so I think about that today in terms of how involved my grandpa was in the community in those early days. As a cooperative guy, that was his view. He was help his neighbor, help the community. And like I say, early guy on the credit union, chaired the very first board meeting of the credit union. It was really cool for me to do that 50 years later. I was the president of the credit union when they had their 50th anniversary, and my grandpa had chaired the very first meeting, and there I am 50 years later. So it's very cool to have that family roots in the community.
Absolutely. Is there any, since you've been elected, and over the 10 years, be it at FCM or UBCM or, again, your travels and adventures as the representative of Dawson Creek, any politicians, again, current or no longer, happen to be serving, that, again, just really good workers, knew how to get things done, were, well-spoken, that sort of thing, that were, just stood out to you? Anybody like that?
Yeah, Blair and I were really good friends, obviously, and we ran for council together in 1993. We were young, and that was where we started our political journey together in 93 to 98, and I left then, and he got elected mayor, and then continued on.
Did he have a full head of hair like I do back then?
No, I don't.
Because that's what
he was maybe darker, but I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't describe it as a full head of hair.
The picture will run as just afro.
But I think to me that that respect of his integrity and honesty and commitment to the community and the region was always stuff that I always really admired and valued, and we were good friends, and now still today work together. I worked for him when he was
Yeah.
the MLA, and
He's
got me
working-
back
he's
in, and now he's back
working
here
for the city,
working for the city. And then there was another guy that in my working days that was he wasn't a politician, but he was a really good, bright. He was probably as strong a mind in terms of thinking, future view, and he got recruited out of Alberta to come for the Liberals in 2001 when they got elected. His name was Paul Taylor, and Paul was the Deputy Minister of Finance and worked at that job for 4 or 5 years. And I got promoted as the CEO of ICBC, and I was vice president at the time, and I got to know Paul and worked for him, and we became very good friends and have been friends since that time. And sadly, he just passed away about 3 weeks ago. He had cancer in Calgary, but I had so much respect and admiration for him just because of how bright in mind he was in terms of policy and how he thought about things.
Very cool. So you're something that people don't, again, I take it for granted, and I know most politicians do. I didn't know you before you were elected. So one thing that politicians immediately when they're elected, and I can speak to this at every level, right? MPs, MLAs, if you're the premier, if you're the prime minister, and then obviously any councillor or mayor, you immediately get better at public speaking, just by virtue of the fact you're thrown into the lion's den, be it at council, public events, dealing with people, good or bad. You know, in your 10 years, did you notice? You know, you no longer don't have to go to Toastmasters or anything like that you may have had to before, but did you notice a market improvement over that of just, hey, we're here to have a chat and shoot the shit, so to speak, right?
So I think, honestly, that skill of public speaking, for lots of people, that's right up there with death by fire, right?
Yeah. Well, and then when it comes to re-election, like, talk about the advantage, right? And that is what it is, right?
For sure.
Anybody that can do that.
When I was volunteering in my life in Dawson Creek before politics, in terms of before that, I was involved in the credit union. I was on the Chamber of Commerce. One of the things that I developed and I was involved in was with minor hockey. I was a district coaching coordinator for BC Amateur Hockey. So every weekend I'm doing a coaches clinic. And so all of those experiences give you the opportunity to speak in public. And so I think the more you do it, it's like anything, the more experience you have, the more comfortable you become at it. And so I think, and obviously when I was the vice president of ICBC for 12 years, that was my role. I was out in communities doing presentations and expected to do presentations.
Yeah.
And so I think, Rob, that's just part of it. When you get into these public roles, you better get comfortable with public speaking, because you're always doing presentations and you're always doing events where you're asked to speak, sometimes spur of the moment, sometimes without
months advance,
knowing.
sometimes,
so I think that's just a skill you develop in terms of the experience of doing it every day almost. And even in council, right? It's people. I notice that I feel badly for people who come in as a delegation, right?
Sure.
Because you come in there and now you're in front of council, you got the staff, and you're in this.
Well, I can give you staff where they have to come in and that talk, because I know I'm involved. I got named in it too. The underground city we're working on, Project Legacy. Okay, now I'm joking with Jeremy. We got our meal planning in at NLC. How do you deal with that level of stuff? I mean, I got it a few times saying, "Hey, look into this," and then I got people screaming at me because I was part of it, and that's why I wasn't looking into why you were moving into the underground city, which is I don't even have an adjective to describe it. But how do you deal with that kind of business?
Yeah,
I mean, that's one thing if it gets mailed in. That's another thing if people are telling you. And then you're going to the Hague for war crimes and stuff, right?
Yeah, no, sometimes there's this stuff that resonates that you think, holy, like where did this come from?
Yep.
And there isn't an absolute one piece, one shred, one thread of truth to it. And so, to me, honestly, whenever I would get that stuff, that was that part about communication. I would always just try to say, look, here's what we've done. This is not true, and you can't change somebody's opinion. Sometimes they just don't believe it. But that stuff, when it was going on, and I was seeing these maps and this stuff, and I was thinking
the schematics and
and then I think it was in Russian or
then it goes into clearly Arabic text of some kind. I mean, as soon as I read it, I said, "That's really read it, looked at it." Whoever's playing a really good joke, preying on the on the conspiracy theories, right? But
Yeah, it was crazy, and to me, it was crazy. It is crazy. We're having enough trouble keeping arenas open and pools open. We don't have time to be building tunnels to Bear Mountain and things like that.
yeah, exactly. And,
You just you better gain the experience, and that's part of the role. And people expect their mayor and their councilors to be out there representing them, and that's public speaking is one of the things you need to develop that skill.
well, is that something that then again, not that you are retired, but it transfers to your private and not mayoral life? I would say immediately. It's easier to be approached, and whether you're the mayor or not, and talk to people.
Yeah, I think that's a skill that once you develop it and you have it, then you're comfortable with it, and I think that then builds that persona and reputation of people that they can engage with you, and you're going to be comfortable with it.
So, I mean, we talked about what this fall rolling in as you're still the mayor and then winding down, but there's going to be a day, who does get elected, you're going to be on that list of former mayors. What are you doing? And I don't know what are you doing, but obviously they're not going to have to move you out of here with an insurrection or anything. But do you have a plan?
Yeah,
vacation
No, I set up a company. I'm going to go do some consulting. I like working, and it's funny how you work hard all your life to get to that point, that day when you can retire, and I spent about 2 years being retired, where I didn't do anything. I was just tired when I finished my corporate days of traveling, and I needed some time. But I like working. I like filling my day with purpose, and that's why this has been so engaging. And so the three things that I've really enjoyed is I really liked working with industry, and learning about the industry and resource development in the region. I really enjoyed the First Nations work with the Treaty 8 and the Métis. And I really like the community stuff. So hopefully, to me, I can find a way to wiggle into a space where I can find a way to provide value in the marketplace for people.
Not to forecast where exactly you're going, but that would be one of those would be kind of the look-ats as far as where you might find yourself consulting.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I think you get.
So you're not running for MLA?
No.
Well, just there's a bit of
Bernie's not going.
There's a bit of a trend, though. You know what I mean? No, but eventually he won't be, and then we have to move the next mayor up. Is that how it works?
Well, maybe we'll get one of these young guys in there.
We'll see what happens.
I traveled for 12 years, and the shine wears off the pumpkin fast on travel, right? Travel's a hard life, and it was one of the reasons I retired when I did, because I've been traveling for 12 years. So, no, I have no aspirations for anything further in terms of political. I've loved this 9 years as the mayor, but also we shouldn't ever expect that we're going to be here forever. There should be new blood, new vision, new ideas come, and I completely respect that, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter. But my goal right now is just I'll finish and then start to try to move into that next chapter of doing some consulting work, I hope.
And after Christmas, come out guns blazing kind of thing?
I honestly have no timeline right now in terms of that, and so we'll just see how the world unfolds, and you got it. It's value, right? You got to find a way to provide value where somebody recognizes that and say, look, I think you can provide some value to our organization,
certainly,
our business, and I'm willing to pay you to do that. So I might be working for free.
Hey, if you like it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly it.
Money ain't everything.
That's all I had. Is there anything we didn't bring up that you want to talk about that, again, just...
No, I don't think so. I think honestly the reflection of when I wrestled with the decision, I don't talk about that.
Yeah.
So obviously the COVID pandemic was tough on everybody.
Sure.
It was really, really difficult for all of us as individuals and as communities and as country in the world.
Yeah.
And it was so divisive in certain ways for some folks in terms of the polarization that existed. And so through when the return of the public health orders last fall, when coronavirus started to percolate along and started to resonate in communities and caused us to make decisions, it became very, very difficult for me personally in terms of just how that pressure of expectation of people who wanted us as the local government to ignore some of those public health orders.
Well, I was going to ask you, how do you, again, because it's an argument from which I would not approach because I know enough, but I couldn't imagine myself being in a position of a municipal elected official, being a council or mayor, and having not one ratepayer talking about it, but more than one telling you to ignore provincial
Yeah.
government guidelines. You just go, but I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Unknown
You know?
caller.
Yeah,
So,
no,
so
that-
how do you, you're a veteran politician, how do you square that with a ratepayer that's saying, listen, the province has closed the rec center, but I want to go curl or I want to play hockey.
It was really tough for people who were of the view that there was this hoax being imposed upon us.
Well, and that's a different, like, we can talk about that too. Like, there's a difference between now I want you to just keep the facilities open regardless of whatever's going on versus, okay, now I want to talk to you about the 5Gs or the, the hoax issues, right?
For us, that was the difficult part about that expectation of people saying, look, no matter what, you got to open up these facilities. And that was why we were trying, I was doing my best to try to communicate and saying, look, you didn't elect me or these folks to decide what public health orders or what bylaws or laws that we're going to adhere to or not. And so through that process then through November, December,
must have been frustrating.
it was really, really difficult. And so that's where I was getting to the point of thinking, I had to make a decision if I'm going to do this again for 4 years. And it was certainly the family and folks and myself wrestling with that decision. But it really got me in January where I thought, you know what, if I'm wrestling with the decision as to whether I should do this or not, I'm not the person.
Decision.
I'm not the right person to be doing this.
Yeah, sure.
And so then when I got to that realization and decision, it was really, really difficult through Christmas and through that point because I really would have liked to have done one more term. I would have liked to have been here for the completion of the hospital and some of that other stuff. But 9 years is 9 years, and so when I reached the point in February where I said, no, I'm going to announce that I'm not running again, then it was kind of a wave of kind of peace rolls over.
Well, it's like mercury washing away, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, let's face it, you'll be around for the hospital.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm going to
Yeah.
be around and
Yeah.
I'm staying involved. I've been involved in the South Peace Health Society and the Bolterice House and that whole project again now. And last 6 or 7 months, I'm very proud of kind of where we're at there, and I'm going to stay involved in that on hopefully completion and stay on that.
You brought up something amazing. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob.